Today I'm out in Deer Park, California with our new presenter Brian, and we are taking a look at the all-new, first ever Acura MDX Type S. What do you think?
And this one is in my favorite color, the Tiger Eye Pearl. I don't know what you think of it, but I'm a huge fan of it.
I love the Tiger Eye Pearl. This is sort of, in person, it's sort of baby poo yellow, but that's just a descriptive term. I don't think it's bad at all. I would totally buy an MDX Type S or a TLX Type S in this color because I think it works really well with the sporty intentions of the vehicle.
Since this is a higher performance version of the MDX, what exactly does this compete with?
Excellent question. I asked Acura that myself. So theoretically, the MDX Type S is not a competitor for a V8 BMW X5. It's BMW X5 with a 3-liter turbo, Q7 with the 3-liter turbo, Mercedes-Benz GLE, again with the 3-liter turbo because this logically has a 3-liter turbo, and of course something like the GV80 or the Volvo XC90 in appropriate trims.
But unlike most of those, this comes standard with a third row seat.
It does, and that's one of the big advantages for getting the MDX over most of the competition is this has a really accommodating third row. So if you're looking for 3 rows of room and 7 seats with a higher performance model and 7 usable seats, you probably want to put the MDX Type S on your shopping list. Now, what are the differences up front versus the regular MDX?
So of course we still have the Precision Concepts sort of diamond-shaped grille, but it's got this body-colored surround to it, which looks pretty cool. And of course a ton of sort of gloss black accents down here below that sort of give it a sort of sportier look, which is appropriate.
And we're driving the Advanced trim today, so the Advanced trim gets a little bit of extra black trim all the way around. I'm a little bit torn on that because the Advanced trim, as you'll see around the side, also gets black fender flares. I kind of wish they were body colored. Now this looks kind of like the regular MDX grille, but it's not. It actually, they claimed better airflow, right?
Yeah. A little bit more of that, and of course that's for the increased performance. It's going to need a lot more air in the engine bay, so makes sense to me.
Yep, and then 2 bigger air ducts on either side for 2 extra radiators versus the regular MDX. But the headlights, they're basically the same. One slight correction, the black trim around the vehicle is shiny in the Advanced trim. It is matte if you get the non-Advanced trim of the Type S, but all of them have the black accents. Let me know what you think about that down there in the comment section. I kind of wish that the Advanced trim had actual body colored segments right here, especially over the wheel wells. I think that would have cleaned up the look a little bit, but I do like the shiny black accents everywhere else. One solid reason to buy the MDX Type S over some of the European competition is the amount of standard driver assistance tech that we get.
That includes a surround view camera, we've got lane keep assist, adaptive cruise control,
blind spot monitoring, parking sensors, all that kind of stuff. A lot of features that are optional, strangely enough, even in some safety-obsessed brands from Europe. In terms of dimensions, the Type S doesn't add any extra length to the MDX. This is still 198.4 inches long, putting this on the longer end of the luxury 3-row mid-size crossover segment. Obviously, there are bigger 3-row vehicles out there if you want one. This is about 4 inches longer than a BMW X5, which does have an available 3rd row in the back, but it is pretty small, and it's about 1 inch shorter than the Audi Q7. On the inside, however, this is right around the same as that Audi model.
Appropriately for your high-performance model, we have these large 21-inch alloy wheels. They're the largest fitted to any Acura product ever, and the largest, of course, you can get on an MDX. They're fitted with 275mm wide tires, so very wide, very grippy. Brembo brakes, which have larger brake rotors, and the electro-servo technology from the NSX.
Also a first for Acura is an adaptive air suspension that's standard on the Type S. Ground clearance will lower down to 6.7 inches for easier entry and exit, as well as better handling in sport mode, and it will lift up to 9.4 inches in lift mode for extra rough road clearance.
The back end of the MDX Type S is sort of business up top, party at the bottom. Up here, this is essentially the same as the rest of the MDX lineup. Full LED taillamp modules, just a few black accents, but things are a little different down here at the bottom.
Yeah, if you're behind one of these and you want to figure out if it's a Type S without looking at the badge, take a look at these giant quad exhaust exclusive to the Type S.
And then there's a little bit of aero treatment right there in the middle, and according to Acura, this can be equipped with the same tow package as the regular MDX, so you can tow 5,000 pounds. And that's probably why this middle section right here, where the diffusers are, looks removable. With the addition of the Type S trim, there are now 2 engine options in the MDX. The base engine remains the same. It's a 3.5-liter naturally aspirated V6, producing 290 horsepower and 267 pound-feet of torque.
But if you check off the Type S box, just like in the TLX Type S, we have this 3-liter single-turbo V6 with 355 horsepower, 354 pound-feet of torque.
That's a pretty healthy bump, and super handling all-wheel drive becomes standard. The 10-speed automatic transmission is still here, but it's been strengthened for the Type S.
And while fuel economy does take a hit, it's only down to 19 miles per gallon combined from 21 or 22, depending on which regular MDX you get.
Which is definitely lower than the hybrid options in this segment, especially the plug-in hybrid from Volvo, but that's still pretty good for a 3-liter single-turbo V6. This Type S is full of firsts for Acura, but the MDX Type S is more than just the performance MDX. This is also the flagship Acura vehicle in the lineup, unless of course you're counting the NSX, which is their halo car. This has the most comfortable seat that Acura has ever put in a modern vehicle. We have a power extending thigh cushion, 4-way adjustable lumbar support, inflatable bolsters, and the first seat in the Acura lineup with front seat massage. The driver's seat has a 3-position memory and a 3-position memory for the passenger seat, and that passenger seat is identical to the driver's seat. It offers all the same range of motion and the massage functionality as well. That definitely puts this Acura in a different category front seat design-wise than the QX60 or even the Lexus RX.
With just over 109 inches of total legroom between the first, second, and third row seats, this is right in line with the Audi Q7 and the Volvo XC90, which Acura will say is probably the closest competitor to this car. This is more room than the Genesis GV80 and the Lexus RXL, but this still has the standard third row seat, unlike some of the competition like BMW X5 and Mercedes-Benz GLE.
I don't know about you, Brian, but I think the middle seat back here in the second row is one of the coolest features of the MDX.
Yeah, just like the regular ones, we have the center seat right here that can be removed for easy access to the third row in case you have seats, like child seats in these outboard positions.
And so many of the third row options in this segment, when you get the performance version, they drop you down to 6 seats, and this stays at 7. So let's see how this comes out. Why don't you go ahead and try it, see how easy it is for you to pull this out. So we gotta lean it down first, and then you pull something down there. Oh, there we go, okay. And then just go ahead and hand that to me. Let's see how this goes. Yeah, it's pretty easy. The middle seat probably weighs about 25, 30 pounds. I'll let you know once we get this in for a full review. What do you think about this guy right here? If you fold it down, it has some storage right here. You have cup holders, a little storage area there, but I love the fact that it comes out. So you do have the option of 6 or 7 people.
Yeah, and it's nice that they give you that option in the higher performance version. You don't have to sacrifice the practicality of having 7 passengers.
And if you're the kind of person that's going to take it out and never put it back in, you'll have an extra seat in your garage.
Looks like a rocking chair.
It does actually, it kind of stops right here. You can't actually rock it much further than that.
The one downside of having the standard bench seat back here is, unlike captain's chairs, there are no armrests for the seats, but there's also nothing to replace the seat with down here. So we've got the exposed latches. It's a little lumpy, a little bumpy, kind of interesting, but let's see what it's like to put the seat back.
That looked pretty easy. What do you think?
A caveman can do it.
Unlike some of the European competition, we have 3-zone automatic climate control rather than 4-zone automatic climate control. Rear heated seats available, but not standard in the Type S. No ventilated seats available. Lots of power ports back here, 12-volt power port, USB charge only ports, and that 110-volt inverter port as well. A big selling point for the MDX is its family friendliness. We have 3 sets of latch anchors in the second row. This is pretty unusual. They're actually dedicated latch anchors for this removable center seat position. That's a really nice touch. Now on the downside, the center seatbelt position does come out of the ceiling rather than out of the seat back. I think that's a bit of a misstep. Remember that with kids, there's going to be a point where you can't use the latch anchors anymore, and if you're using this shoulder belt, it's going to interfere with this outboard seating position and can possibly skew the child seat to one side. That's kind of a bummer. Getting into the third row seat is pretty easy. We have a power mechanism for the second row seat to tilt and slide it forward. Now let's go for a look around the third row. How tall are you, Brian?
5'9".
And so you kind of fit back there in that seat. You have plenty of room there.
Plenty of headroom. They've obviously cut out a little bit back here because we've got the panoramic sunroof up front.
At my height, it's a little bit trickier back here.
Yeah.
There's really no headroom to speak of going on here. But this is one of the more accommodating third row seats in this segment.
It's better than the XC90 and the RXL as well as the Q7.
In addition to having the second row seats that flip and tumble forward, of course, we have that removable middle seat, which we mentioned earlier. That's a really handy touch because you can escape through the middle if you want to. Now, one thing I will note is if you have wider booster seats or wider child seats of any description, forward-facing or rear-facing, they're likely going to be wider than this center console right here.
Thanks to the fact that the seats in front of me slide fore and aft, I could get more legroom out of this, but my knees are currently sort of hitting up against the back right here in this upright position. There is an easy release button right here to slide the seat forward. And with the seat forward, you can see that my 10.5 size shoes were trapped a little bit under the seat itself.
The third row seats don't get latch anchors, but they do have top tether anchors. Third row seats don't have air vents, which I was a little bit surprised by. There's a USB charge only port right here, speaker grills on the sides.
And then up here we have 2 of the 6 Highline speakers that are in the headliner. These are part of the 25 speaker exclusive to the advanced trim signature edition of the ELS 3D Studio sound system, which sounds amazing. Cargo space behind the third row is exactly the same as the regular MDX, 18.1 cubic feet, and that's including this nice little well you get under here, which can be covered with a lid. And Alex, how much space do you get with the third row folded down?
With this folded down, as I suspect most people will all the time, it's about 48 cubic feet, so definitely bigger than the average compact crossover like an RDX. I have to say, I really love this underfloor storage area. You can put your loose knickknacks under there, keep them out of the way, or you can remove the lid and easily put these 22-inch roller bags right here behind the third row. Another really cool touch, there is this button over here on the side, so I can press the button, then I can toss you the key, you can walk away with it, and the lid will close all on its very own. Now let's take a quick spin around the interior. Keep in mind that we are in the advanced trim, so obviously there are going to be a few things that you won't find in the regular Type S. We have a pretty large panoramic moonroof that goes to just over the rear seat passengers' heads. This model has well-integrated rear sunshades, height-adjustable shoulder belts, and four-way adjustable headrests. There's a little button on the side that you press. We have perforated leather because this does have ventilated front seats as well as heated second row seats in the advanced trim. You can see that it has pretty aggressive bolstering right there on the driver and passenger front seat back that is inflatable and adjustable. Between the two Type S trims, there are 4 different interior color options. This is the lightest of them. They call this one Orchid. It's sort of a tan or light beige color. There's also a dark blue and a charcoal interior. If you get the advanced trim, then we get real wood trim on the dashboard and on the doors. You can see the 3-position seat memory for the driver and front passenger there. Large speaker grills down there for the ELS audio system. Lots of soft touch materials on the door, but I have to say the upper portion of the door, I kind of wish that was a premium stitched material like we find over here on the dashboard. Instead, it's a soft touch injection molded material. We have a really attractive stripe of real wood that runs right across the dashboard. This really dresses the interior up. And then below that, we have the piano black that a lot of luxury cars have been adopting. More stitched material down there at the bottom. A pretty decently sized glove compartment. I don't think an 11-inch tablet would fit in there, however, but lots of soft touch materials going down there, just as you'd expect out of Acura's Flagship. Right here in the middle, we have Acura's latest infotainment system. This is not a touchscreen, however. The infotainment system supports wireless smartphone integration, but this has an infotainment software that I'm not the biggest fan of. It all has to do with the controller. It is a touch controller, similar to what we saw in Lexus models in their last generation products, but with a twist. This particular touchpad operates a little bit differently when you're in smartphone mode than when you're not in smartphone mode. So smartphone mode, it works kind of like a mouse. You flick your finger around like that to move the cursor around on the smartphone, but when we're on the home screen, you position your finger in the upper left quadrant there. If you want that upper left option, you put it in the upper right quadrant if you want that upper right option, right like that. So the interface does change a little bit based on what you're doing. Below that, we have 2 large air vents, the engine start stop button, the controls for the tri-zone automatic climate control system, lots of physical buttons if you're a fan of that. We have this big drive mode knob right here that toggles around between the 5 different drive modes that we have in this vehicle. You can also push it for the individual option and push and hold to configure that particular option. Now, since this vehicle has the massaging seat option, you'll find that button right in line with the seat heating and ventilation. There's an auto mode for auto seat heating and ventilation, and then this button activates the massage. We have 3 different levels. And if we press and hold that option, then the massage menu comes up on the screen and we use the controller to control the type of massage that you want. Acura is very proud of the fact that this offers 9 different massage modes, which is more than the competition. Back to the center console, we have a button to disable the auto start-stop system, auto brake hold, the hunt and peck shifter that we see in other Acura models. This pops up USB charge only ports. Then behind that, again, we have the controller for that infotainment system. This is where we find the volume knob and the toggle for track forward backward. This is what the Type S key looks like. It's pretty much your typical new Acura key with the Type S logo there on the back. It has a really nice feel to it. It's a small storage cubby there, 2 large cup holders, a wrist rest, large Qi wireless charging mat. I love the size of this. This definitely has enough room to charge some of those larger smartphones that are out there. We then have a padded center armrest, a small amount of storage there. This is where we find the USB corded input if you'd rather use that. On the driver's side, we have a full color heads-up display. It's housed in that area right there, and a full LCD instrument cluster. For some reason, the TLX Type S does not get this full LCD, and it really helps dress up the interior. It's not as configurable as some of the other luxury segment LCDs that we find with moving map displays, etc. The information on the right side of the display can be toggled around for a few different screens, and the theme of the display does change based on the drive mode, but it's a pretty minor change. You can see there's normal, there's comfort, we lose the tachometer, and then for some reason we get it back in the snow mode. And if I click this and hold it for Sport Plus, things do change a tiny bit. It automatically pulls up the G meter there. We get the boost pressure for the turbo on the left side, large tachometer right there across the top. The steering wheel is similar to the one that we find in the regular MDX, but in the Type S it features a flat bottom, Type S badging, perforated sections for the leather on the sides, pretty decently sized sport grip right there. Paddle shifters on the back. These are plastic. I would love to have seen metal shifters in the Type S. Lots of buttons on the steering wheel. The ones on this side relate to volume, track forward, backward. If you press the apps button and then scroll the wheel, that will scroll through the heads-up display's interface. We have a back button for that heads-up display, power button right there, heated steering wheel button, voice command button, and then on this side we have the controls for the adaptive cruise control and lane centering system. We also have another scroll and toggle button that scrolls through the options on that multifunction LCD instrument cluster. I love the buttons that Acura gives us to the left of the steering wheel. We have some buttons for the heads-up display. You can change the heads-up display brightness with just a simple toggle. Also, the height on the windshield with that toggle there. This button is for the active safety systems. If I push that button, it brings the display up here, and then you use the toggle on the steering wheel to turn those systems on and off. Out on the road, the first thing you're going to notice is the improved acceleration thanks to the new turbocharged 6-cylinder engine. And the engine sounds pretty good, but if we toggle it over to Sport Plus here,
you get actually almost 8 decibels louder in terms of the actual engine sound you get, and it sounds really good.
There's a little bit of digitally augmented engine noise, but pretty much everybody's doing that in this segment right now. According to Acura, the transmission will also shift a little faster if we're in Sport Plus. So if you want that absolute best acceleration from a stop, you're going to want Sport Plus. This is one of the few vehicles that will be just a hair faster. The idle speed goes up from just over 600 RPM to about 1,000 RPM, somewhere around there. And then, of course, we get those faster shifts in Sport Plus.
And if you're back in normal or comfort mode, you actually get active sound management in this model we're in, so it's pretty quiet in here in those modes.
That's basically active noise cancellation, so similar technology that we see in other luxury vehicles. Now, one thing that did surprise me is that there's no summer tire option in this MDX Type S like there is in the TLX Type S.
I mean, we do have some pretty low profile and really wide tires, and they do a pretty good job, I think, from what I'm experiencing. But yeah, a summer tire option would be pretty nice, I think.
And I'm sad by that a little bit, but I love the fact that we have the wide tires on this because summer tires are an easy upgrade for you aftermarket, and wider tires not so easy. So I'm really glad that Acura went the extra distance, gave us those wider wheels and 275 width tires. These are just about as wide as the average European crossover. Because we don't have summer tires on this model, I suspect the 6-0 braking score is going to be a little bit longer than some of the German options. It's worth noting that even though summer tires are optional in many of the BMW and Mercedes competitors, almost always those manufacturers send us models with summer tires, and those are always going to stop a little bit shorter. But we do have pretty aggressive brakes here, and again, those really wide tires.
And also keep in mind the curb weight, which is pretty competitive for the class. It undercuts a lot of the options that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, about 4,800 pounds, just under for this TLX Type S in the very top end trim. That's pretty decent. I mean, I was actually surprised by that a bit because the TLX is a little heavy for its segment, and they're closely related. But for an adaptive air suspension equipped vehicle with a turbocharged engine, this isn't bad.
Yeah, there's only like 500 pounds difference between the two, and honestly, yeah, for the size of this vehicle, I think this, honestly, the engine and the weight distribution works kind of well here, I think.
Yeah, there's a definite weight distribution difference between this and some of the European options, so keep that in mind. If you're after that purity of handling ability, you're going to want the BMW or the Mercedes with closer to 50/50. This is 58, I think, 58/42, something like that, so certainly a lot of weight up front. This has more weight on the front axle than the Audi or the Volvo, and you will feel that. Now, if you're out on a road like this, like I mentioned earlier, you will really feel that torque vectoring rear axle, sending power around, really helping you around the corner. But if you're throttle off, this definitely is going to feel more front heavy than the BMW or the Mercedes.
And even though we don't have a spare tire in the back, this is 300-ish pounds more than the regular MDX. So that's interesting that the engine weighs that much more. It makes up for that difference.
Yeah, it's the engine, it's of course the air suspension components, things like that. They didn't comment on how much more the tires and wheels weigh, but probably a little bit of weight there as well.
Yeah, those 21s being bigger, yeah.
I wasn't sure what to expect out of Acura's first adaptive air suspension system because air suspensions can be tuned towards the softer side of things or to the firmer side of things like you find in some of the German options, but I think Acura hit exactly the right balance with this suspension. If we're in normal or comfort, this is quite comfortable, but it's not floaty-boaty, and that is definitely a good thing. So here in comfort mode, there's still a little bit of suspension wobble if I just wobble the steering wheel side to side, but it's not too much, really. And if I put this in Sport Plus, things certainly firm up, but this is not as rock hard, not as unlivable as some of the AMG competition. Unlike some air suspensions, this is not just an adaptive height suspension, this also has adaptive damping capability. That is important to keep in mind because, for instance, the first generation Jeep Grand Cherokees with air suspensions, they didn't adjust the damping rate. It was simply an adaptive height suspension.
We don't have the equipment to test out the decibel level in the cabin, but I suspect it's about the same as the regular MDX, of course, until you floor that engine.
Right, because this has the same sound deadening treatment in each corresponding trim as the non-MDX that's approximately similar. So this one gets the acoustic laminated side glass, for instance.
And that's not just in the windshield and the front doors, it's actually in the back doors as well.
As with other vehicles that offer acoustic laminated glass, you're going to notice the biggest difference with this glass at higher speeds. So for instance, if you live in Texas, where there are those 75 and 80 mile an hour speed limits, you're definitely going to notice there's less wind noise. But at lower speeds like the road that I'm on right now, there's not going to be a huge difference.
So Acura says this is going to get around 19 miles per gallon combined, and of course we don't really know the full figures because we haven't had it for a full week to test it out, but that number is a little bit less than what you're going to get in even some more powerful German competition like the BMW X5.
That's true, and a lot of the German competition offer mild hybrid systems standard, and then of course they're full hybrids and plug-in hybrids.
So those hybrid options include the Lexus RXL, which is pretty much directly cross-shopped with this car, as well as the Volvo XC90 Recharge.
Yep, and the Recharge is going to be probably the best option, I think, in this segment if you want some plug-in hybrid capability. And for 2022, Volvo has bumped that puppy up to 455 horsepower, which seems strangely insane for a Volvo.
But the XC90 isn't really tuned the same way this is. This is much more oriented towards the sporty, dynamic experience. The XC90 is a straight-line performer.
And you can get the XC90 with the R-Design trim and the R-Design suspension, but it's never going to feel quite like this. And the big difference is going to be in on some of these winding mountain roads. It'll remain to be seen if 2022 improves this much, but the XC90, of course, has a lot of horsepower on the front and less horsepower on the rear, so you're certainly going to notice that imbalance.
Bottom line for me, at least, I think this is a really good package that's still comfortable but also dynamic and sporty. So if you're a parent or somebody who has the need to fill up the back of your trunk with a lot of stuff, this is a really good option.
Yeah, I mean, it's great out on the road, and once you drop the kids off, you can have fun if there's a winding mountain road between you and the daycare. If you want to get your hands on the new MDX Type S, these should be on dealer lots just about the time that you're watching this video, and they are going to be a little bit more expensive than I was expecting. It's going to start at $66,700. Now that obviously buys you the 3-liter turbocharged engine, the Brembo brakes, the upgraded wheels and tires, and a few interior tweaks.
But if you want massaging seats, the upgraded signature edition of that ELS Studio sound system, or even a head-up display, you got to go to the advanced version, which is $72,050.
Now, in some ways, that can seem a little bit expensive, but in other ways, it's a pretty good deal. It really depends on how much you want the extra feature content that we find standard on the TLX Type S that is optional on the majority of the competition. Obviously, for the usual detailed comparison section, you're going to have to wait until one of us gets our hand on this for a complete week, but let's just roll generally through the direct competitors that you should keep in mind if you're shopping for an MDX Type S.
Kicking things off, we have the Audi Q7, which has a 3-liter turbocharged engine, and it starts at $62,500 and only 335 horsepower.
Although it is worth noting that 0 to 60 performance in that model is likely going to be a little bit better than this one simply because of the design of that drivetrain. The next 3-liter turbo model is the BMW X5, although the 3-liter turbo there is standard and it's optional in the Q7. With all-wheel drive, that one is $62,900.
Then we've got the Mercedes-Benz GLE 450 with its 3-liter inline-6 turbocharged engine, which also has an electrification component to it. That one starts at $64,000 and has 362 horsepower.
You should keep in mind, of course, with the GLE and the X5 that most of the ones on the dealer lot are going to be 2-row vehicles. This one has 7-passenger seating standard. Also standard with 3 rows is the XC90 in America at the moment. Volvo has flirted with the 2-row version here and there, but at the moment they're all going to be 3 rows. That's going to set you back $64,800 for the plug-in hybrid version. That would really be the performance corollary to this MDX Type S.
And don't forget about the Lincoln Aviator, which has a 3-liter V6 twin-turbo engine with 400 horsepower. That one starts way down at $54,285.
And that is the price tag, I have to say, really surprised me when I was doing this list because I forgot that the Lincoln Aviator is so inexpensive, to be perfectly honest. It is considerably less expensive than the Cadillac XT6, and I think it's one of my favorites in this segment. It's not going to drive quite like the MDX Type S, though, however. All-wheel drive is optional on that vehicle. It does produce a lot of power. 0 to 60 performance, I'm going to have to wait until I can get my hands on one of those for a complete review. But I think it is really a solid competitor to the MDX Type S.
I totally agree. I think they look really good. They're really spacious and luxurious on the inside, but something to note is they don't have as much standard equipment as this model does.
That's true. It's all about standard equipment here. Keep in mind that the MDX Type S comes essentially fully loaded with a few exceptions that you will get on the advanced package right from the factory for that base price tag. But I think bottom line, if you're shopping for A 3-row vehicle that is family friendly and has extra power and a lot of sportiness to the way that it drives, the MDX absolutely should be on your shopping list. And all things considered, even though this is not the least expensive, I think it's a pretty good deal. What do you think, Brian? On the off chance that you needed a 3-row crossover, which of these options do you think you'd pick at this moment?
I think it'd be a pretty close tie between the Aviator and this Type S. Because I like a more dynamic driving experience, the Type S might get a slight edge over this, and I think this color choice also gives me goosebumps, so it might be this model right here for me.
Yeah, I don't know about you. Let us know what you think about the color down there below. I love this color as well. I love the Aviator, but oddly enough, even though that's rear-wheel drive and it has a better weight balance than this is more fun going up a winding mountain road than that Aviator.
So that's going to do it for us today. For more news, reviews, detailed content on cars and everything else in between, head on to lxautoautos.com, and we'll see you on the next one.
Yep, Facebook, Instagram, all those other places. Bye.